Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world far removed from glowing screens and city humor, a world where lanterns flicker like fireflies, and each step on a cobbled path feels like a heartbeat of the earth itself. You're standing at the edge of a medieval village, where the sun has just ducked behind the hills, and the wind carries the scent of wood smoke, wet earth, and a whiff of something slightly suspicious, of possibly cabbage. It's quiet, but not silent. Distant voices mumble, a dog barks, and somewhere, a tired ox exhales like an old accordion. You won't find electricity here, no streetlights, no neon, no glowing open signs. What you will find are lanterns, dozens of them hung from hooks, placed on windowsills, or swinging gently outside doorways. Their light isn't just for seeing. In this village, it's a living thing. It guides, protects, and according to at least 3 elderly women and 1 untrustworthy goat, can ward off misfortune, ghosts, and yes, heartbreak. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where in the world are you listening from? Drop your city and local time in the comments, and let's see how far this little village light reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing under the first lantern of the night. It's an iron frame wrapped in horn panels, glowing ember from the tallow candle within. The horn is cloudy, bubbled from years of use, and inside the lantern dances a flame that's been burning since dusk. You lift it gently, feel its warmth on your knuckles, and begin to walk. The village road is mud-packed and curved like a lazy river, flanked by cottages with straw-thatched roofs and leaning stone fences. Each home is alive in its own quiet way. An occasional cough, a creak of timber, the clatter of a spoon inside a wooden bowl, and each one bears its lantern like a shield against the dark. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers actually feared the dark more than wild animals or human threats, but the sheer number of lighting customs suggests they feared something. In some records, lanterns were said to protect against night spirits called noctgists, beings believed to steal warmth and occasionally one's voice. You might not believe that, but the smith's wife swears her husband lost his voice for 3 nights after forgetting to light their lantern. Now, not all lanterns are created equal. The poor use fish oil lamps or rushlights, bundles of dried rushes soaked in fat, which hiss and crackle like they're telling secrets. The wealthy, they might afford glass panes, imported from distant towns, polished until they glint like stars. But even the poorest family lights something. A fireless home at night is a cursed one, or at least a suspicious one, the kind of place where dreams get tangled. You pass by old Marin's house. She uses 3 lanterns, 1 at the door, 1 in the back garden, and 1 hanging from a tree. She claims the 3rd keeps her late husband's spirit from wandering too far. Her neighbors nod politely, then cross themselves twice for good measure. Here's a weird fact. In 14th century France, a village decree actually required every home to display a light after dusk on holy days, not to honor the Saint Sinope, to prevent people from falling into the pig trough. True story. As you walk, you start to notice the rhythm. Lanterns hum faintly in their own way, soft waxy crackles, metal creaks in the breeze, the flutter of a moth brave enough to approach. You're not just walking through a village, you're walking through a breathing body of warmth and worry, tradition and tenderness. Every flickering light is a whisper of safety, a signal to the night, we're still here, we're still warm. Then you see a child run past barefoot, laughing, holding a tiny lantern made from a carved turnip. That's right, turnip lanterns were a thing long before pumpkins stole the spotlight. It glows with a mischievous face, and for a moment, you swear it winks at you. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushes down the lane and extinguishes the lantern beside you. The air turns colder instantly, as if the absence of light pulls the warmth from your skin. You relight it with the taper you carry. Everyone carries one here, and the flame bursts back with a grateful sigh. You walk on, toward the village center, where the oldest lantern still burns. It's said to have been lit over 100 years ago, with the same flame passed on from candle to candle. Some say it's nonsense. Others say it's sacred fire kept alive through wars, plagues, and the mayor's terrible poetry. Either way, no one dares to let it go out. By the time you reach it, The village is fully cloaked in night, and the lanterns are the stars of this little world. They blink, they dance, they whisper, and under this patchwork of flickering halos, you realize, this village isn't afraid of the dark. It just prefers to meet it halfway with fire in its heart, and stories in its breath. You keep walking, and with each step, the night folds around you like a woolen cloak. There's a quiet dignity to this place, a kind of rhythm you feel more than here. The village doesn't buzz or bustle, it hums. You pass a chicken coop where the birds are already roosting, tucked in like puffy feathered dumplings, and even they seem synced with the sleepy tempo of the village. It's as if every living thing knows, once the lanterns are lit, it's time to settle into the heartbeats of the dark. The road bends near the well. You pause there, listening, not for water but for voices, because if you stand still long enough, you'll hear them. Snatches of conversation slipping through cracks in the shutters, laughter rising from kitchen hearths, and once in a while, a lullaby so soft it seems to come from the earth itself. You trudge a little farther and notice how each home has its own rhythm. One window flickers with shadows of hands kneading dough, another pulses with the up and down sway of a loom, a third bursts suddenly with a loud sneeze and a curse in what might be Breton, or just someone inventing new profanity. Whatever it is, it feels alive. And this isn't just poetic fluff. Medieval villages were built around cycles, both practical and spiritual. Bells rang to mark prayers and labor. The rooster was a grumpy timekeeper, and homes operated like clockwork. Wake, work, worship, wash, wait for dusk. You could practically guess the hour by the smell in the air. A baked dry, boiled cabbage, maybe a whiff of burnt onions if someone got distracted by gossip. But here's the thing no one tells you in history books. The village breathes as one because of the people's limits, not in spite of them. They don't have alarm clocks, refrigerators, or delivery apps. Everything they do depends on light, weather, seasons, and each other. If Matilda copyright tell the cooper doesn't finish his barrels, the brewer can't store his ale. If the baker oversleeps, the whole village skips breakfast. That interdependence, it's not a birdina, it's the backbone. Historians still argue whether this rhythm was oppressive or comforting. Some call it the tyranny of tradition. Others see it as a lullaby, a one that soothed generations to sleep under the same stars. Either way, your steps fall right into its cadence, and you don't feel hurried. You feel held. You pass a house with an open window, and a woman inside is singing as she plucks feathers from a duck. Her voice is soft and a little flat, like someone half remembering a melody from childhood. You don't understand the words, but the warmth in them feels like a blanket. As you listen, your eyes drift to her shelf, jars of dried herbs, a pair of knitting needles stuck into a half-finished scarf, and a carved wooden cat with one ear missing. Tiny things, but each one is a thread in this village's grand quilt. Then you turn onto a narrower lane, really more of a path. Here the houses huddle closer, roofs nearly touching, and it smells strongly of peat smoke and goat. A teenager brushes past you, leading a donkey that looks both tired and judgmental. The teen mutters something about father forgetting again, and disappears into the dark. You don't ask. Instead, you stop beside a window where firelight plays against the wall. Inside, a man is sharpening a knife, not because he's dangerous, though he does have the eyebrows of a villain in a folk tale, but because that's his nightly routine. Knife, whetstone, rhythm. It's his lullaby. You watch for a moment, then move on, hearing only shhhk, shhhk behind you. A quirky detail for you. Some villagers believe that if you sharpened tools too late at night, you could cut the dreams of your neighbors to splinter their sleep like a chopped log. So some folks waited until just after dusk or before dawn. Others didn't care. They figured if your dreams are weak enough to be sliced by steel, maybe you should wake up. You laugh a little at that thought, the kind of laugh you don't mean to make aloud. A moth flutters past your ear, and you flinch instinctively. It's just a moth, but deep down, part of you half expects a fairy or a wandering curse. Blame the stories. Soon you arrive at the square. If it can be called fada, it's really just a widening of the road with a crooked bench, a fading mural of a saint, and a post where notices are nailed in shaky handwriting. One parchment flaps in the breeze. It warns of wolves. Another announces a wedding, complete with a crude drawing of a chicken wearing a veil. Artistry is not this village's strength, but still, Someone lit a lantern right here in the square. It hangs from the post, swaying gently, casting a circle of golden light that makes even the cracked cobblestones seem sacred. You sit on the bench for a moment, letting your legs rest, letting your thoughts drift. Above you, the sky darkens into deep ink. Stars blink into view. You walk slowly, shyly, and you wonder how many villagers before you sat here and counted them. Probably dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe none. It doesn't really matter. The village breathes, and tonight, you breathe with it. You rise from the bench, your joints giving a small protest, as if even your knees are asking, do we really have to keep walking? But there's a pull in the air, a kind of invisible string tugging you down the next lane, where the scent of warm bread is strong enough to make your stomach grumble in betrayal. You follow your nose, as anyone with a working set of instincts would, and soon find yourself at the low, rounded doorway of a cottage with smoke curling lazily from the chimney. This is the oven-hearted homia, one of the oldest structures in the village. You duck inside, not as an intruder but as a guest expected by the house itself. It's warm, achingly so, like stepping into the middle of a thick wool blanket that's been sunbathing all day. The central hearth dominates the space, with a clay and stone oven built into its side, wide enough to bake 10 loaves at once and hot enough to dry boots in mere minutes, should anyone be foolish enough to leave them too close. Here's a historical tidbit. Medieval ovens weren't just for bread. They were multifunctional hubs used for drying herbs, warming bed sheets, curing meats, and even hatching chicks. Some households would leave clay pots of porridge inside overnight, a kind of slow-cooked peasant risotto. Others, they left charms, just a few bones or coins or scraps of hair tucked behind the brick, insurance against illness or misfortune. Tonight, the oven's already done its baking. A row of browned loaves rests on a linen cloth dusted with ash. You resist the urge to pinch a corner. You'd fail, of course, because you're human, and the smell of fresh bread is stronger than most moral codes. You ease down on a low stool beside the hearth. Across from you sits a woman with a round face and sleeves pushed up past her elbows. She's humming while polishing the blade of a wooden butter churn, and she doesn't look up. She doesn't need to. This is her rhythm. There's no rush here. The fire crackles, the oven ticks as it cools, and the scent of rosemary wafts up from something bubbling in a pot. You think of all the places where people gobble microwave meals under fluorescent lights, alone with their phones, and you think maybe this isn't such a bad way to live. There's a curious charm nailed above the oven, a crudely carved cat with one missing eye and a tail that curls like a question mark. It's not just decoration. In some parts of Europe, hearth guardians, often cat-shaped, were believed to bring protection, fertility, and a particularly crispy crust. Historians still argue whether these symbols were pagan holdovers or merely creative wood-carving projects with a lucky reputation. The woman finally speaks, her voice like warm barley. If the fire dims before midnight, someone will be born with 2 crowns. You raise an eyebrow, and she grins. Could be nonsense, but every time it's happened, a baby with a double cowlick's been born. That counts for something, doesn't it? You nod slowly, as if agreeing to the terms of an invisible, very ancient contract. The oven lets out a soft creak as it settles. A child's giggle echoes from the adjoining room, where you glimpse 2 little heads buried in sheepskin blankets, whispering secrets only siblings can understand. One of them sneezes, and a tiny hand shoots out from under the blanket to wave at you. You wave back, unsure why you feel so deeply seen. Then the father enters, tall and broad-shouldered, carrying firewood and wearing the look of a man who could carry twice as much if his pride were properly challenged. He sets the logs down gently, nods to you, then disappears behind a curtain that separates the sleeping space from the main room. There's something profoundly steadying about this home. It isn't grand. The walls are cracked, the floor's uneven, and a family of spiders has claimed a support beam with an air of entitlement. But every inch of it pulses with care. The fire doesn't just heat the space, it remembers things. Arguments soothed by tea, stories told after the third cider, the scent of bread on the day someone came back from war. You're tempted to stay longer, maybe forever, curled beside this living oven, but you rise, gently, careful not to disturb the rhythm. You nod to the woman, who's now plucking rosemary and humming something that could be a lullaby or a warning, depending on how you hear it. Outside again, The chill is a little sharper. The sky a little darker. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling like a crust that's just left the oven is still warm, but cooling fast. Then, with a final glance back at the clay chimney and its gentle plume of smoke, you move on. The house doesn't call you back, it doesn't need to. Part of you already stayed behind. You step out and the night greets you, and not with silence, but with softness. Everything's quieter now, but far from still. The houses murmur through their shutters, the wind brushes low through hedgerows, and somewhere, a horse snorts like it's annoyed that the stars are still working. You pass under a crooked archway where vines have crept like nosy neighbors, and suddenly you're inside another world, at the raftered heart of a home that doesn't even know you're visiting. Because you're not entering physically this time, you're listening. The voices inside are layered like woven cloth. Low murmurs from the adults, high-pitched whispers from children. A story is being told. You lean close to a cracked window, and the words tumble out like dried herbs from a pouch. A broken bar. And when the wind stopped, she turned around, and there was no one behind her. A broken bar. Gasps. One nervous laugh. Then the hush so sharp you think even the shadows are listening. These beams above ya, the thick, knotted ones blackened by centuries of soot and smoke, ya have heard more stories than any priest or king. They've grown through blizzards, trembled in storms, and still held fast as generations passed beneath. They've seen babies born, deals struck, oaths made, and one particularly unfortunate incident involving a sheep, a ladder, and a deeply regrettable song. No one sings that one anymore. Historians still argue whether these communal stories, these oral fireside tales, were based on real events or built entirely on imagination. Some say they preserved ancient knowledge. Others say they were just the medieval equivalent of "and then the call came from inside the house." But what's certain is this: stories were serious business. Some homes even had designated tale seats near the fire, where only the storyteller could sit. Elders passed stories like heirlooms, not just to entertain, but to teach. Don't go into the forest after dusk. Don't trust a smile without wrinkles. Don't leave your shoes pointing toward the door. Still unclear on that last one. Tonight, the tale is about a saint who tricked a demon into living in a turnip. There's a lesson in there somewhere, though you're not sure if it's be clever or never trust root vegetables. You hear a child ask, "Did it really happen?" And the grandmother replies, "Does it matter?" Then she throws another log on the fire, and the flames leap like they're applauding. Inside, steam curls from a hanging kettle. A young girl braids her sister's hair, tugging just hard enough to assert rank. The family dog lets out a long, theatrical sigh from beneath the bench. And on a shelf above the hearth, small bundles of herbs, a sage, mugwort, lavender, hang like sleeping bats, waiting to be burned, steeped, or whispered to. Their uses vary depending on whether you're asking a healer, a priest, or someone named Bridget who talks to chickens. You step back from the window, smiling, but part of you wishes you could stay. Just one more story, one more bowl of stew, one more seat near the fire where someone would hand you a warm cup and say, "You look like you've walked a long way." Instead, you move on, down another lane. This one is narrower, more twisted, the kind of path that children dare each other to walk blindfolded. Above, two lanterns sway from opposite corners, their light bouncing in slow, sleepy arcs, and between their glow, shadows pool like ink. That's when you see a small wooden carving nailed to a door frame, a figure with a long beard, one eye closed, and a lopsided grin. A house spirit. Locals believe he watches over the rafters and eats any lies told under his roof. The left eye closed means he's still listening, the right eye closed. You're on your own. There's something intimate about these symbols, things passed down not in books, but in habits. You light the left candle before the right. You touch the doorway with your thumb as you enter. You never step over a broom. These aren't superstitions. They're the grammar of a village, the unspoken rules that make this sleepy place more than just a collection of houses. They make it a home. And beneath every rafter, every beam, there's a person learning that grammar. A girl watching her mother stir the same clockwise motion into the soup. A boy tracing the carved pattern in a wooden spoon his grandfather made. A teenager lying awake, listening to a story he pretends not to care about. You walk a little farther and see a firefly float past, then another, and another. The real stars of the village, blinking lazily through the air, not in the sky. You pause, watching them, wondering what they know. Behind you, laughter erupts short and loud and a door creaks open. Someone spilled something. Someone else is pretending to be mad. And somewhere, in that noise, is a note of joy so soft it wraps itself around your ribs. This village breathes as one, not because they're perfect, but because every crack in their walls echoes with warmth. You followed the flickering fireflies for a few steps, then veer left, drawn by the unmistakable scent of sweet wine and the faint clink of coins. The market square has dimmed, but not died. Like a smoldering coal under ash, it still glows, quietly alive with late-night dealings and the kind of gossip that ripens best after sundown. By day, this is the place of cabbages, eels, eggs, and wool. By night, a whole different market emerges. Not officially, of course, no one would admit it, but every villager knows that when the lanterns hang low and the baker's shutters are latched, the real trades begin. You pass a stall that should have closed hours ago, but the merchant, an older woman with more wrinkles than bread loaves, leans against a barrel, whispering to a neighbor. You catch only a few words: ... twins born with teeth, a broken bar, moon was wrong, a broken bar, and then her eyes flick to you. She smiles. You nod. She nods. You move on, because no one survives asking follow-up questions in the middle of a village whisper. Somewhere behind you, a jug clinks. You don't turn around. Historians still debate whether medieval night markets were encouraged or merely tolerated. On one hand, evening trade meant more business. On the other, it was harder to tax and far easier to smuggle. Some documents from 13th century England mention fines for selling fish by moonlight without a license. Which begs the question, who inspects fish in the dark? But here, moonlit deals are just part of the rhythm. You pass a barrel that doesn't look like a barrel, and the man leaning on it definitely isn't guarding anything, except maybe 5 jars of illicit honey meat and a pouch full of river pearls he definitely found himself. A younger boy slips between 2 houses, returns with a bundle of herbs, and trades it for what looks like a copper button and a piece of salt. A deal. Fair? Who knows? But no one complains. These trades aren't about money, they're about trust, or, failing that, plausible deniability. Then, under the shadow of the chapel wall, you spot the quietest deal of all. 2 women, one veiled, the other holding a small, trembling chicken, whisper together in tones low enough to be mistaken for humming. You don't hear what's said. You don't need to. Some exchanges aren't for understanding, they're for surviving. Maybe the chicken's part of a cure, maybe it's a message, maybe it's a bribe for something only the lantern shadows can see. And speaking of lanterns, the ones hanging around the square are different, not like the homey horn-paneled ones by the doors. These are sleeker, made with burnished copper and decorated with punched star shapes that scatter the light into constellations. As you move past them, stars bloom across the ground beneath your feet. It feels like walking on a sky that forgot how to be far away. You come across a musician sitting on a stool with a broken leg. He strums a bowed instrument with exactly 3 strings, all slightly out of tune, and sings a ballad that sounds vaguely like heartbreak, weather, and cheap cider. A cat sits beside him, clearly unimpressed. You drop a pebble into the man's cube, not because you don't have a coin, but because tonight, that feels like a fairer trade. He nods. You nod. The cat ignores you both. A quirky fact, in several medieval towns, market musicians were considered sacred in the hours after sundown. Not religiously, mind you, more like socially enchanted. You couldn't arrest them, curse them, or supposedly steal from them. Some say it's because they carried news between villages in their songs. Others say no one trusted a thief who could carry a lute without breaking it. You turn a corner, and suddenly find yourself face to face with an old man pouring wine from a wineskin into 2 wooden cups. He looks up, sees you, and without a word, offers you one. You accept. Naturally, it's sweet, with a sharp backbite like friendship laced with honesty. Fair weather, he mutters. And no wolves tonight, you reply. He smiles. Not yet. You don't ask his name. He doesn't ask yours. And when he disappears down an alley without finishing his drink, you don't chase after him. Not because you're scared, but because some things, like stories and late-night wine, are best left half-finished. You walk on, the taste of honey and smoke still on your tongue. The market thins, Lanterns dwindle, footsteps fade. But even as the square empties, it never feels empty. It feels like breath held just beneath the surface, like tomorrow's trade is already stirring in someone's dream. And as you step back into the hush of the village proper, your hands still warm from the wooden cup, you know one thing for certain: even in the dark, the village never really sleeps. It just negotiates with the night. You leave the market square behind, and with each step, the sounds of trade and quiet laughter dissolve into something softer, something deeper. A hush falls over the village, and even your footsteps begin to feel intrusive, like they might wake the very cobblestones. Then it happens. A low, drawn-out chime rolls through the night air like honey over stone. One note, then another, slow and deliberate. The village bell is speaking. You stop where you are, no matter where anyone is in the village. They pause when the bell tolls. It's not just habitat, it's instinct. Like a heartbeat you didn't know you shared with everyone around you. The bell hangs in a squat stone tower just off the chapel, a hunchbacked thing, really, built more for function than fashion. It's been there for centuries, and it shows. Moss clings to its base, and one of the iron rungs leading up to it is bent like someone lost a bet involving a cow and bad decisions. The chime you're hearing now isn't for prayer. It isn't even for curfew. It's simply the hour bell. Every night, on the hour, someone climbs the creaking ladder and tugs the rope once for each hour past sundown. A job as ancient as the village itself, passed from hand to hand like a sacred trust. And on nights when the bell doesn't ring, well, a broken bar, let's just say, those are the nights people sleep with one eye open and salt sprinkled across their thresholds. Historians still argue about the true purpose of these hourly bells. Some claim they were practically meant to regulate sleep cycles or ward off thieves. Others insist they had ritual significance, marking the passage of night like monks marking hours in a cloister. And a few fringe scholars argue it was simply boredom, because what else are you going to do at midnight in a village with no theater? Tonight's chime rings 5 times. That makes it nearly midnight. Your feet crunch softly on gravel as you continue on, each echo of the bell folding itself into the air like pages turning in a book you've never read but somehow know by heart. You wander near the chapel. Its door is shut tight, but its stained glass windows glowing faintly, illuminated by lanterns inside. The colors shimmer on the ground, muted purples, golds, and holy blues spilled onto the stones like melted dreams. You don't go in. No one goes in after dark unless they have a reason. And no offense, but you don't want a reason. Instead, you sit by the old stone well nearby. It's covered now, sealed with thick wood and iron bands, but they say it still murmurs on cold nights. If you listen hard enough, it whispers prayers or curses or confessions. Or maybe it's just frogs. But try telling that to the sexton who swears the well once repeated his father's name, twice, on All Souls' Eve. A curious tidbit for you. Some bells in medieval Europe were baptized, full ceremony, holy water, godparents, everything. They were believed to ward off storms, disease, and worse. One bell in Germany was even credited with preventing a fire from spreading, though skeptics say it may have had more to do with the sudden rain. But back here, in this village, the bell doesn't pretend to be magical. It's old, honest, and slightly cracked, like the best of us. You rise from the well and walk on. The path narrows again, winding past smaller homes, some half swallowed by ivy. A few lanterns flicker in the windows. One has gone out completely. You stop, hesitate, then step closer and gently relight it with the taper in your pocket. No one asked you to, but you do it anyway, because someone once lit yours. And then, as if rewarded, you hear it, a bell, smaller this time, from a home tucked far back beneath an overgrown tree. Not the village bell, but a personal onia strung above the doorway with a ribbon of faded red. It tinkles once, twice, stirred by the wind. These little bells aren't for timekeeping, they're for memory. One family rings theirs for a lost child, another for a brother at sea. One Howuzzy no one quite knows who lives there rings it every year on the same night and leaves a cup of milk at the doorstep. No one touches it, not even the cats. You stand beneath the doorway a moment, listening. The ribbon flutters, the bell whispers, then the air shifts again. The main bell tolls once more, one deep, resonant note. A warning this time. You look up. A soft mist is rising off the fields. Nothing dangerous, just the sort of night fog that makes trees look like they're leaning closer than they really are. A dog barks once. A door creaks closed somewhere behind you. Time is moving, but not forward. It's spiraling, curling in on itself like steam from a hot cup left out too long. And in that moment, it occurs to you, the bell isn't just counting hours. It's reminding the village to breathe, to notice, to remember that night doesn't mean silence, it means listening. You take a deep breath. The air smells of moss, hearth smoke, and something sweet, possibly a stolen apple tart cooling too close to an open window. You walk on, one more chime following you down the path. The bell's final chime fades behind you, swallowed by the night. Ahead, a faint metal clinking pulls. The brass lantern in your hand hums gently, and not a sound exactly, but a vibration, like it's remembering something for you. You carry it down the narrowing lane, the stones beneath your feet growing smoother now, more worn, as if thousands of stories have already passed this way. You find yourself drawn toward a familiar scent, of rosemary and ash. Yes, but also something sweeter, honey, apples, and the unmistakable comfort of stew thickened by time and generosity. You follow your nose to a modest cottage where firelight spills out in long golden stripes through the shutters. Inside, the hearth is alive again. Children huddle close to it, not because they're cold, but because the fire is telling stories. Not in words, of course, but in shadows. A candle has been placed just so, and the flickering silhouettes stretch and dance across the whitewashed wall like ancient puppets brought to life. One child holds up a hand in the shape of a wolf, another giggles and makes a goose, a third, clearly the ringleader, manages a surprisingly accurate chicken wearing a crown. The others applaud as if this is the peak of dramatic performance, which, frankly, it might be. You slip in, unnoticed, or at least unacknowledged, which in a village like this is the same as permission. The adults are seated nearby, bowls of stew steaming gently in their hands. One woman is darning socks with the kind of intensity usually reserved for solving crimes. Another man dozes in the corner, head tilted back, mouth open, snoring like a tired bellows. No one wakes him. He fought in a war you've only heard mentioned when wine is low and the fire burns blue. Historians still debate how much time medieval families truly spent together in the evenings. Some argue they were too tired for anything but collapsing. Others suggest these are the gathering around the hearth, the storytelling, the game mezzo was not just leisure, but survival. Culture passed on in quiet, firelit moments. You look again at the children. They're playing a game you half recognize. Something about catching the fox without waking the hens. The rules are inconsistent, loud, and probably invented 10 minutes ago. But the laughter is real. The joy is sticky, like spilled jam on wooden floorboards. Then the grandmother speaks. No one calls her that out loud as she has a name, though no one under 20 dares use it. She sits beside the fire, half-shadowed, with eyes like embers and fingers that tap a rhythm onto her walking stick. When she speaks, the room quiets. Even the stew seems to pause mid-bubble. The boy who didn't listen to the night. She begins. You feel the room lean toward her, just a bit. He thought he knew better than the stars, better than the owls, better than the wind that calls through the hedgerow. So he stayed out late, past the lantern hour, past the bell. The children are already whispering, some pretending not to listen while clearly listening harder than ever. He found a coin in the road. Gold, shiny, but it wasn't his. Was it cursed? One child whispers. Worse, the grandmother says, it was owed. A chill drifts through the room, though the fire doesn't waver. You smile, not because the story is funny at intro but because you've heard stories like this before, just never told quite so well. Stories that warn without wagging a finger. Stories that say there's danger but also there's a way home. She finishes, not with a dramatic flourish, but with a quiet, he never stayed out late again. The room exhales. The children start whispering again, testing the weight of her words in their mouths like candy that might be medicine. The shadows dance a little longer, then begin to fade as the candle burns low. One child, the youngest, curls up beside the hearth and murmurs, "Will the fox get him?" The grandmother leans down, kisses his forehead, and replies, "Only if he forgets how to listen." The boy sighs and drifts into sleep. Here's a detail most people miss. The hearth in a medieval home wasn't just a place for warmth or food. It was the center physically, Spiritually, socially, marriage contracts were signed by it. Blessings were spoken into it. In some places, it was believed that sweeping the hearth clean before sleep could ward off illness and nightmares. In others, it was left purposefully unclean, so the spirits wouldn't think the house was abandoned. You glanced down at the hearthstones, bits of ash, a dropped stitch, a small pile of what looks suspiciously like chicken feathers. It's alive in its own way, this hearth, a silent witness to joy, fear, and the slow stretch of time. You rise quietly, nodding to the woman by the door who nods back with the solemn authority of someone who has never lost at shadow puppet charades. Outside again, the night has grown stiller. Your lantern glows steadily, and as you walk, you realize something. Every fire you've seen tonight wasn't just heat or light. It was a story, told in flame and laughter and the sound of a child breathing slow and safe beside a banked hearth. You walk on. You follow a narrow footpath now, one that slips behind the cottages and skirts the hedgerows like a rumor on the edge of memory. Here, the village softens even further. Less light, fewer voices, more space between the houses, like breath between dreams. Your lantern swings gently at your side, casting moon-shaped slivers across the underbrush. You feel watched, not in a sinister way, but in the way a forest watches, curious, patient, unbothered by your presence. You could turn back, but your feet don't agree. Then you hear light steps rustling dry leaves. Not yours. You stop. So do they. Another step. You turn. Nothing there. Just a breeze stirring the thorns. Or so you tell yourself. A fox darts across your path, silent, russet, a flicker of wildness too quick for fear. It stops briefly, turns its head, and looks at you like it knows something you don't. Then it vanishes through the hedge as though pulled into another world. Foxes are everywhere in village folklore. Some stories call them tricksters, others guardians. In a few old French tales, they're said to be witches in disguise, or messengers between the living and the dead. Historians still argue whether these myths stemmed from genuine fear or admiration, or perhaps just the frustration of missing poultry. But that wasn't the only movement. Not tonight. Behind the fence to your left, footsteps, soft, careful, human. You stand still, breath shallow. Then a laugh, low, familiar. A boy and a girl emerge from the shadows, older teens, arms linked, cheeks pink with cold and secrets. They startle when they see you, then relax when they realize you're just a fellow wanderer. The boy tips an imaginary hat, the girl grins, then whispers something in his ear, and they both disappear down another path without saying a word. You smile. Love in the village isn't loud. It's found in glances across stew pots, in freshly patched sleeves, in midnight walks where you hope the fox doesn't follow. Still, part of you feels a broken bar, unsettled. Not afraid, just aware. A different kind of hush has fallen. Not the cozy quiet of firelight or wool blankets. This one prickles at the edges, like nettles brushing against your thoughts. You walk slower now, careful where you step. Then you reach the edge of the field. No more cottages, just open space, moonlit grass, and the skeletal outlines of bare-limbed trees. And there beside the stone gate a low pile of stones crowned with a tiny rusted horseshoe. It's a grave, but not one from the chapel yard, a forgotten one. You kneel beside it, not out of fear, but something older, respect, maybe. The stones are smooth, hand-placed, probably by someone long gone. There's no name, no date, just a small token, a woolen ribbon tucked beneath a flat stone, and what might be the broken handle of a child's toy. No one comes here anymore, not often, but someone did. Recently, you see fresh wax dripped near the base, a lantern lit here, maybe even last night. Stories swirl around graves like wind around old trees. Some say the spirits wander if not buried properly. Others claim those who die outside the churchyard rise on misty nights to knock softly on windows, asking to be remembered. You sit a while longer, just you and the stones and the wind. And that's when you hear it again, footsteps. You turn sharply. Nothing. Then a movement near the hedgerow. You rise slowly, lantern held high, casting long, shaky shadows through the brush. It's a man. No, wait, not quite. The figure is tall, too tall. Shoulders bent unnaturally. He walks like someone remembering how legs work. No lantern, no sound, just motion. You freeze. And then, As quickly as he appears he's gone, behind the trees. Like smoke folding into itself, you exhale. Maybe it was a trick of the light, maybe a scarecrow leaned by the wind, maybe your own reflection in a patch of night thick enough to hold memories. Or maybe broken bar or not, back in the village, someone shuts a door, the sound echoes faintly across the field. You turn, step carefully away from the grave, and walk back the way you came, resisting the urge to glance behind you again. Your lantern burns steady, its crescent shapes casting calming shadows, now soft, familiar, protective. You pass the fox agana, or perhaps a different Olnia, curled beneath a bush, tail wrapped around its nose. It watches you with one eye open, but doesn't move, as if you've passed whatever test this place demanded. And when the cottages return, with their crooked windows and warm hearths, it's like stepping back inside a lullaby. You've been to the edge of the village. You've heard the footsteps in the grass. Now, it's time to find a bed. The village welcomes you back like an old friend, quietly, without a fuss, but with warmth folded into every windowpane and chimney plume. The cottages lean closer now, like they're whispering about you. He went out past the hedge and came back whole. That's something. You turn down a lane so narrow the houses nearly touch overhead, their rooftops kissing in a crooked arch. The lantern you carry throws a war mark across the stone walls, and suddenly you smell light of fresh bread, but not the kind made for eating. This is Dreamkeeper's bread. You pause at a window where the glow is soft and the curtain is open just enough. Inside, a woman with streaks of silver in her braid kneads dough with a kind of relevance usually reserved for prayer or poetry. The dough is small, just enough for one loaf, and her movements are slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Then you see her do something unusual. She pinches a few dark seeds from a pouch of poppy seeds and presses them gently into the dough's surface. She hums as she does it, the same tune she hums every night, the neighbors say, because she believes the bread holds the tune in its crust. As it bakes, it releases that tune into the dreams of anyone sleeping nearby. Strange? Maybe, but no one on this lane has had a nightmare in over a decade. She finishes shaping the loaf, wraps it in a cloth, and places it still rewa on the sill, just outside the window. Not for birds, not for anyone to eat. It's meant to cool, absorb the night air, and wait. You've heard whispers about this ritual. Some say she bakes it again just before dawn and eats a slice herself to lock in the dreams. Others insist she gives it to the local midwife to crumble into porridge for newborns, so their first sleep is sweet. Historians still argue whether such traditions have roots in ancient sleep magic, pagan fertility rites, or simple village superstition. But one thing is clear. No one dares interrupt her process, not even cats, and certainly not the wind. You step back quietly. Down the lane, you notice another home with something similar. A smaller loaf, left on a plate beside a cup of milk. A sliver of honeycomb rests beside it like a bookmark waiting to be read. You smile. Tonight is a good night for dreams. Then, from behind one of the doors, you hear a whisper, not of voice, but of pages turning. Someone's reading aloud. The words are muffled, but the tone is steady. A child replies in a sleepy mumble, followed by the rustle of a blanket. Another ritual. You pass by the village midwife's house next. Her lantern is shaped like a pear, etched with circles that cast little halos on the ground. Hanging from the eaves are long-dried bundles of herbs, valerian, chamomile, rose petals, all to bless the sleep of mothers and babies, and maybe, if you believe the stories, to summon dreams that tell the future. A quirky fact, in some rural regions, midwives were believed to carry not just healing herbs, but dreams in satchels. If a baby cried too often, a drop of dream-infused water was dabbed behind its ears. If an adult had recurring nightmares, the midwife might prescribe a whisper of lavender over the eyelids and the burning of a clove under the pillow. You peek through her curtain. She's asleep in a chair by the fire, cat curled in her lap, mouth slightly open, a book of herbs still open on her chest. A candle flickers beside her, its flame still strong. You move on. The deeper into the village you go, the more dream loaves you spot. Not all are perfect, some are overbaked, others have herbs poking out at odd angles. One looks suspiciously like it might have raisins, but every loaf holds something. Intention, a little hope, a gentle please whispered to the night. You begin to understand that this isn't just ritual, it's a kind of quiet pact between the villagers and sleep itself. If we feed you well, If we light our way, if we tell our stories and shape our bread with carry a broken bar, then let the dreams be kind. You reach the last cottage on the lane, where a young girl sits on the steps in a wool blanket much too big for her. She's holding a doll made of straw and scraps, and she waves at you shyly. You wave back. Is your bread out? You ask gently. She nods and points to a tiny loaf on the windowsill. It's lumpy and lopsided, but it's covered in sugar and cinnamon. You nod solemnly. That one's going to catch very good dreams. She beams and pulls her blanket tighter. You continue on, now fully immersed in the scent of bread, herbs, and the slow, deep rhythm of a village falling asleep on its own terms. Your lantern flickers on Sia, just on Sia, as if bowing to the dream keepers. And somewhere behind you, the old woman's loaf begins to rise. Even in the cool night air, the air is thick with the scent of sleep now, of bread and lavender, smoke and stillness. The kind of stillness that hums, just barely, beneath your skin. You walk on, slower than before, as though each step sinks a little deeper into the fabric of the night, and then you feel a tug, not from the lantern, not from your feet, but from the air itself, like you've stepped across an invisible line. The path narrows between two stone walls, barely wide enough for your shoulders. Ivy spills down in lazy loops, and somewhere a wind chime clinks a single uncertain note. You're in the village's oldest quarter now. It's not marked, not official, but you can tell. The stones here are darker, the beams heavier, the houses don't lean forward so much as settle, like old animals curling in on themselves, and every doorway you pass has something strange hanging beside it. A dried frog, varnished and dangling by a red thread, a twist of straw braided into a circle, with one green bead tied into the middle, a chicken bone, painted white and nailed to the lintel. Wards, you've heard about them. Of course, every village has its charms, a little superstitions passed from wrinkled lips to eager young hands, but this feels different. This feels intentional. One home has feathers, hundreds of them tucked into its eaves. Another has an iron key embedded in the stone near the threshold. One even has a strip of bark with a single word scratched into it: forget. You pause there, just for a moment, then you walk on. Historians still argue whether these apotropaic symbols were magical talismans or simply folk art. Some claim they were rooted in pre-Christian belief systems, others that they evolved from misunderstood liturgical symbols. A few fringe thinkers even suggest they were just a handy excuse to repurpose broken farm tools. But here, you don't need theories. You just need to look. A window opens ahead of you. Slowly, deliberately, an old man peers out, his face folded like a well-read book. He doesn't smile, he doesn't blink, but after a few seconds, he nods on Sia and shuts the window again. Permission, or maybe warning, hard to say. A strange chill curls around your ankles as you reach a crossroad with no signposts. Four paths split off in different directions. The lantern in your hand flickers. A gust of wind whips through, and every charm around you rattles like a choir of dry bones. For a second, it sounds like words. You lean in, and then it's gone. You take the left path. It curves around a cottage so old its roof looks more moss than thatch. The door has no handle, just a ring of salt poured neatly around the stoop and an unlit lantern with a cracked pane. A child once told you that this is where the charm mother lives, that she hasn't aged in 50 years, that she speaks only in riddles and smells like burnt rosemary, that if you leave a shoe with a secret under her window, it'll be clean by morning and your secret forgiven. You don't test it, not tonight. Instead, you keep walking, and that's when you stumble upon the altar. It's not marked, not labeled, just a flat stone table beneath a tree whose bark is darker than the night. On the stone are offerings: a half-eaten apple, 3 bent nails, a tuft of lamb's wool, and what might be a locket or a bell or a tooth. It's hard to tell. You freeze, because suddenly, you realize something strange. You can't hear the village anymore. No laughter, no fire crackle, no soft thump of doors shutting, just wind, and leaves, and the far-off sound of something knocking, and not hard, not fast, just a broken bar steady. You back away slowly, the lantern in your hand burning brighter now, as if protesting the silence. A quirky belief from the coastal regions. It was said that if you ever wandered too far from the hearth on a winter night and felt the urge to turn around without knowing why, that was the charm of the dead pulling at your collar, not to harm you, just to remind you that you were never really alone. You walk faster, the charm seems to shift in your peripheral vision, as swaying, twitching, or maybe just breathing in the wind. But then a light, warm, golden, mundane light from a proper lantern hung on a plain wooden post. Civilization. You step back onto the main path, your heart steadying. And just as you begin to breathe easier, a voice drifts from a nearby window. Never step between 3 charms hung in a row. You freeze again. It's a girl, maybe 10 years old, whispering to someone inside. Because if you do, she adds, you'll leave the village a broken bar. But not really. The other child gasps. You do too, but you're already walking, and behind you, the charm quarter sighs and sleeps. The path widens again as you leave the charm-ridden quarter behind. Slowly, like a muscle unclenching, the village breathes you back in. You pass by homes that feel lighter, some more awake, less guarded. Chimneys puff merrily, curtains sway lazily. There's even laughter behind one shutter, the unmistakable kind that comes from someone slipping on a rug or misunderstanding the punchline. And above it all, spread wide and open, is the sky. You pause, because this sky, this particular slice of Ida, feels impossibly near, closer than it should be. The stars aren't just dots, they're stories waiting to be told, old ones. You lie back on a mossy stone bench near a small courtyard where no lights burn. The village sleeps around you now, fully and deeply. Even the dogs have gone quiet, tails twitching in dreams of chasing geese they'll never catch. You tilt your head to the heavens. There's Orion, but not the warrior we know here. He's the blacksmith with 3 sons. His belt is their birthright, and one of them stole fire from the moon. At least, that's how the story goes when the cobbler's wife tells it after her second cup of cider. You're right. The milk spoon, known elsewhere as the Big Dipper, but in this village, it's said to pour dreams across the sky. If you sleep facing north, you're supposed to remember those dreams. If you sleep facing south, the dreams remember you. That's not unsettling, not at all. You spot a cluster of stars low on the horizon, just barely visible above the rooftops. They twinkle in an uneven rhythm, like they're catching their breath. A whisper rides the wind. Those are the waiting stars. They don't have stories yet. They're saving thema for you. Maybe, a quirky tidbit, in some parts of medieval Europe, it was believed that each person had their own star. When you were born, it blinked for the first time. When you died, it fell. Sometimes you could see 2 people's stars grow brighter when they loved each other. Other times, the stars dimmed in pairs, quiet and synchronized like goodbye. Historians still debate whether these beliefs were rooted in actual stargazing traditions or just poetic superstition passed around fires. But when you lie here under the sky, with the lantern beside you dimmed to a soft pulse, it's hard to argue with the poetry. The cold stone beneath you presses gently into your back. It's grounding, reminding you that for all the mysteries above, there's comfort in what's beneath. The earth, the village, the warmth still lingering in your bones from fires you didn't light. Then a soft movement catches your eye. A figure in just a silhouette climbs onto a rooftop nearby. Young, light-footed, they lie down flat, hands behind their head, clearly watching the stars. A quiet ritual, no one else around, no one commenting, just a broken bar stargazing. You think about joining them, then you decide not to. Some rituals are meant to be private, or maybe it's a test. One night, you'll climb a roof too, but not tonight. Instead, you look back at the sky. It watches you, not in a threatening way, more like a mother checking to see if you're asleep yet. You remember another village saying, the stars blink because they're dreaming, too. And if they are, then tonight is one shared dream, woven through bread and bells and charms and shadows. A dream with shape and breath and a heartbeat you can feel in your toe. Your lantern sputters once. You relight it with a practiced flick. The stars seem to flicker in approval. Then a shooting star rips across the sky like a blade through velvet. You don't wish on it, not because you don't believe it, but because this village has taught you that some wishes aren't spoken aloud. They're walked, lived, carried in silence until the lantern goes out and the sky carries them the rest of the way. You rise slowly, your limbs reluctant to leave the cold stone's embrace. Your journey through the village isn't over, but for now, you've found something stillness couldn't give you. The certainty that the sky is not above you, a broken bar. A broken bar, it's with you, watching, remembering, waiting. You rise from the bench slowly, joints murmuring in protest, as if even your body knows it's not meant to part ways with starlight so easily. The lantern sways back into your hand, a warm weight, steady again now as though your pause under the sky had somehow reassured it to. Back among the cottages, the hush is thicker, not heavy, just settled, the kind of quiet that happens only once a village has truly gone to sleep, when even the nightbirds stop gossiping, and that's when you notice, the homes are shuttered. All of them, not just to keep in warm but to keep sleep in. This village doesn't treat sleep like a necessity, it treats it like a sacred rite, a nightly ceremony. You come to a door with a carved symbol above the lintel, a closed eye, etched deep into the wood, a sleep sign. You've seen them scattered throughout the village, carved or chalked onto doors and beams, some simple, some intricate, all reminders that rest is not just earned, but respected. You peek through a crack in one of the shutters. Inside, a family lies side by side on straw-filled mattresses. The fire has died to glowing coals. A mother's hand rests over her child's. An old man in the corner snores softly, his feet sticking out from under a lopsided wool blanket. And then, a quiet movement, barely more than a breath. The eldest daughter rises slowly, careful not to wake the others. She pads over to the hearth, picks up a smooth stone from a bowl, and places it under her pillow. You blink. That's an anchor stone, a part of a village tradition that few outside ever learn about. Before sleep, you choose a stone, just a small one, worn smooth by time and touch and whisper a thought into it, something unfinished, a problem, a hope. You tuck it under your pillow, and if you dream well, the answer comes. The next morning, you place the stone back into the bowl, or keep it, depending on what it told you. You step back from the window, thoughtful. A scholarly debate rages among anthropologists. Was medieval sleep segmented or divided into first sleep and second sleep, with waking hours in between, or was that simply a product of certain climates and habits? Some say the in-between hours were filled with prayer or writing. Others claim they were for talking with neighbors, eating midnight snacks, or according to one especially salty monk's notice, regretting things said at supper. You stroll past a house with something even stranger outside, a pillow tied to the branch of a tree. Yes, a pillow, according to local legend. This is to catch any dreams that wander out before dawn. If the dream is gentle, it stays in the cotton. If it's cruel, the wind takes it. The logic is tenuous at best, but the pillow is always there. Some say it's never been wet by rain. You pause beside a stone trough where water sits still as glass. Above it, a string of bells, a tiny, delicate, silent for now. These are dream bells, and they're only meant to ring in the morning. If your dream was particularly vivid, it's said that if someone else hears your bell, they'll dream the same thing the following night. You wonder how often that happens. You wander farther and find a small nook in the wall of a home, just a little alcove, carved like a shell. Inside it sits a folded cloth, a broken comb, and a sprig of lavender, a sleep offering. This is for those who can't sleep, who wake too often, or not at all. The idea is simple. Offer a piece of yourself to the night, something worn, something personal, something fragrant. In exchange, the night offers rest, maybe not perfect, but enough. You sit beside the alcove for a moment, breathing in the scent of crushed lavender and old stone. Then you close your eyes, just for a heartbeat, and there it is, the sound of sleep. Not just snores or soft breaths, but the layered hush of a village trusting the dark, a faith that the night will pass safely, that the bread will rise, that the charms will hold, that the stars will blink, and the bells will chime, and morning will come. Sleep isn't passive here. It's a ceremony. No one falls asleep by accident. They enter sleep, the way others might enter a temple, with care, with preparation, with belief. Your lantern burns low now, the flame flickering like an eyelid half closed. You rise and walk on, slower still, as if you, too, have joined the ritual, because in a village like this, sleep isn't escape, it's homecoming. The road ahead is quieter now, even by this village's standards. You've walked through warmth, through story, through shadow and superstition, but here, something else settles over the rooftops, something softer, almost reverent. You notice the wind has stilled completely. Not a breeze stirs the hedges or rattles the signs. The lantern at your side flickers less with movement now and more with breath. Yours. The nights, maybe the villages too. It's hard to tell anymore where you end and it begins. Then you hear it. Not a voice, not a bell, a name. Just one, whispered on nothing. It's not yours, but it could be. You stop walking, you glance behind you, half expecting someone to be standing there. No one is. Only the fields, barely visible in the darkness beyond the last row of cottages. Only a single tree in the distance, one arm bent like a gesture or a wavia or a warning, and the faintest hum of something unsaid. Welcome to the part of the night where the village gets personal. You step slowly forward. Every house here has its shutters closed, its curtains drawn. No more dream loaves, no night watchers, only the soft suggestion of sleep behind every wall. But above, the wind picks up Aganabarelia, and in it, another name, and another. The names drift low, almost beneath hearing, as if the village itself is remembering. They're not always names of the living. In fact, in many villages as this one included, there's a belief that the wind carries names of the dead who aren't ready to rest. Not angry, not haunting, just unfinished. Not ghosts, exactly. More like echoes with good manners. Historians still debate whether this stems from ancestral veneration or simply the human need to make meaning out of rustling trees. But here, the villagers have long understood, when the wind says a name, you don't answer, you nod. You acknowledge, and you move on. You pass a cottage with no lights, no smoke, no sound, but on the door is something new. A twig, bent into the shape of a figure eight and tied with a bit of red yarn. It's a sign that someone inside has heard a name recently. The figure eight isn't for eternity. It's for listening, for looping, for keeping a memory alive just long enough to set it down gently, like a feather onto water. You move on. There's a tall fence ahead, built from uneven stones, with ivy spilling down like it's trying to keep secrets from the sky. Tucked into the ivy are tiny scraps of fabric, some embroidered, others plain. A few have dates, most don't. They flap gently in the still air, though you feel no breeze. These are forgettings. They're not memorials. They're not exactly prayers. They're offerings to forget and not to erase, but to ease, to release pain, or guilt, or questions that will never be answered. Each scrap is a whisper left behind. Some villagers come here after nightmares. Others come after long silences at dinner. A few don't come at all, but someone always ties the fabric for them. You reach the far end of the path, where the village gives way again to open field. There's a low wall, and beyond it, fog swirls over the grass in lazy drifts, like sleep not quite committed to staying put. And then, just to your left, you spot something that brings you still. A single lantern, set on the wall, untended, steady, burning blue. You remember what Hervé Tilde copyright said. It's not ready, but here it is. A lantern that glows not with warmth, but with remembrance. Cold fire, not unfriendly, just solemn. In the stories, blue lanterns were placed where someone had passed with a burden, where a name still clung to a place like a vine refusing to die. In some villages, they're called waiting lights. Not to summon, not to ward off, just a broken bar to wait. You sit near it for a while, feeling its cool glow press gently against your skin. The wind swirls again, playful now, wrapping around you like a shawl, tugging at the name it whispered earlier. You don't speak it, you don't need to, you let it pass through. And as you sit there, eyes half-lidded, a new sound finds you, a soft thump, then another, light, steady, footsteps. Someone else is walking the village tonight. You glance up and see a figure in the distance, crossing through the fog. No lantern, no shoes, moving slowly, carefully. You don't feel fear, you feel a broken bar recognition. You nod to them, they nod back, and keep walking. Sometimes, dreams take the long way home. Your lantern's blue hue fades gently into gold again, like a promise kept. You rise. It's time to return to the heart of the village. The names have been carried, the silence has been heard, and now, at last, a broken bar. A broken bar. You're almost ready to sleep. You leave the stone wall behind, the fog at your heels like an old dog that doesn't want to come inside but also doesn't want to be left alone. The village draws you back, not with urgency, but with the gentle magnetism of a bed made warm and a pillow that knows your name. Your lantern, now golden again, swings in your hand with a tired rhythm. It's burned steadily all night, but you can feel it dimming just slightly, as if it's growing drowsy too. You pass familiar paths now at the baker's doorstep, still dusted with flour, the crooked bench where the bell had rung, the little window where the girl showed you her dream loaf. Everything you saw earlier feels changed, not because it is, but because you are. You've walked through the whole village, through its history, its shadows, its whispers and rituals. But this next part, the final part, is not for walking, it's for resting. You find your way to the sleep house. That's not what it's called, officially. No one calls it anything, really. It's just an old stone structure at the center of the village, tucked between the chapel and the workshop. But when someone is too tired to go home, too lost to sleep alone, or too full of waking to face a beta, this is where they come. Tonight, no fire burns inside, just a line of cots, each with a thick wool blanket folded with military precision and a small clay pot of herbs beside the pillow, lavender, mugwort, sometimes mint. You choose one near the back, the mattress stuffed with straw and softened by use. You sit for a moment, breathing in the air. It smells like sleep, not fresh linen and candle no, deeper. It smells like dust, and moss, and every dream that has ever passed through this room and left its ghost behind. You lie down slowly. The blanket is scratchy but familiar, like your grandmother's voice when she told you stories you weren't quite old enough to hear. There's a small mark carved into the bedpost beside you, a symbol, a half moon, half wheel, maybe a snail. It's old, worn smooth by hundreds of fingers tracing it before closing their eyes. You run your thumb across it, and now, in the quietest moment of the night, the last ritual begins. The wind outside softens again, no longer carrying names. The lantern at your bedside dims to the faintest glow, casting your breath in golden rhythm on the stone wall beside you, and you think a broken bar, about the bell tower, and its stubborn chimes, about Hervé Tilde copyright, and the way he whispered to brass and glass, about the fox, and the children, and the dreamkeeper's loaf, about the names the wind remembered, and then about you, because this story, like this village, always had room for you in it. You, the listener. You, the walker under the lantern sky. You, who stayed awake just long enough to reach this moment. And now, it's time to let go. Let the lantern go out. Let the charms do their work. Let the stars blink over someone else for a while. Let your anchor stone do its dreaming. Because here, under the quiet weight of centuries, beside strangers who sleep like family, and within a village that knows how to guard a silent sea, a broken bar. You have reached the place where stories end and sleep begins. And now a broken bar. Your breath begins to slow, your arms grow heavier, your thoughts loosen their grip, one by one, like little knots untying in the dark. You can still feel the warmth of the lantern in your hand, even though it's no longer there. The road behind you is long, but it doesn't press against your shoulders. It simply rests, like everything else tonight. The village has gone still, the hearths have cooled, the dream loaves have risen and been taken in, the bells won't chime again until morning, and the wind, a gentle now, curls around the corners of the houses like a lullaby in another language. Even the stars seem to dim just slightly, as if they too are settling in for a long, gentle silence. There is nothing you need to do, nothing to remember, no names to carry, no foxes to follow, only sleep, deep, even, village sleep, the kind that holds you, the kind that rocks you like a story being whispered in your ear, the kind that knows exactly how far you've walked, and how gently you need to fall. So let your eyes close, let the last lantern fade, and dream, dear one. Dream like the oven is warm and the story's been told. Dream like the village is still breathing beside you. Dream under the lantern sky. And when morning comes, well, a broken bar, you'll still be home. Hey guys, tonight we step quietly into the woods, a real woods. Not the polite park trail version with handrails and ice cream carts, but deep, old forest. The kind where the moss grows thicker than memory and birds don't just chirp, they whisper things they probably shouldn't know. Light barely filters through the canopy, the ground is damp and stubborn, and everything smells like stories left too long in a cellar. You walk slowly at first, more out of instinct than fear. The path ahead looks inviting, but in a sideways sort of way, like it wants you there, but maybe for its own reasons. Mist rolls across the forest floor, curling around your ankles as if to ask, are you sure about this? Spoiler, You're probably not surviving this forest the way you expect to, but that's okay. It's not that kind of danger. It's quieter, stranger, the kind that doesn't teach you, it changes you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and tell me where you're listening from tonight. A city, country, forest cabin, back of a taxi at 3 a.m. What time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The forest doesn't rush you. It never does. It's eternal, after all, and it knows things move faster when they want to be caught. You step onto the first stones of the path, a flat, worn, sunken just slightly into the earth like they're exhaling under your weight. There's no signpost here, just a wooden stake, long rotted, with a loop of rusted iron still clinging to its top. Whatever it once held, a bell, a lantern, someone's hata has long since been taken by the woods, or returned to it. You move forward, birdsong flutters through the trees, but it's patchy like a radio tuning in and out. Some calls are sweet and warbling, others are single, deliberate notes, spaced too evenly to be accidental. It doesn't feel sinister, just aware. You duck beneath a low-hanging branch. The leaves brush your hair like an absent-minded ant, and as you straighten, you swear you catch a flicker of movement just out of sight. But when you turn, there's only mist, and mushrooms. They're everywhere, clusters of tiny brown caps on logs, delicate white shelves spiraling up tree trunks, even one stubborn blue puffball growing directly in the middle of the trail. You step around it. It feels like the kind of thing that notices being kicked. Fun historical fact: mushrooms were once believed to be signs of fairy gatherings, particularly when arranged in perfect circle, what we now call fairy rings. Farmers in the Middle Ages were known to avoid those spots entirely. Historians still argue whether these beliefs stemmed from actual hallucinations or just a very clever way to keep people from messing with delicate fungal ecosystems. You stop for a moment, kneeling near the base of a twisted tree. There, carved into the bark, are initials, not yours, but close. The style is older, maybe even 18th century, but the letters are oddly familiar. Someone, at some point, wanted to be remembered here. You trace your finger along the groove. The bark is cool and dry. Above you, the branches stretch inwards, not up, as if the forest isn't reaching for the sky but trying to pull something closer. Light filters through in soft green shafts, and everything smells like wet stone, lichen, and the soft trot of fallen leaves. You breathe in, you breathe out, and you realize the air tastes old, not stale, but full, as if every breath you take carries a little of what was here before. A campfire smoke from a lost traveler, lavender from a forgotten pouch, the iron tang of a sword long buried and longer forgotten. You keep walking, your boots squelch slightly with each step, but the sound is muffled by moss. Somewhere to your right, a crow calls once, then twice, then a broken bar, not at all like it got the answer it needed. You glance behind you, just for a second, and there's your first mistake. The mist has shifted, the entrance is gone, the trail forward is still here, plain and open, but the way back, fog, trees, no sign of the rusted stake. That's when it sinks in. The forest hasn't trapped you. You've entered a part of it that remembers differently, and it's not in a hurry to let you forget who you are. The path ahead isn't sinister, it's just quietly sure of itself. It winds like it always meant to, with the kind of confidence that only old places have. You're not lost exactly, but you've stopped pretending you're in control. You walk on, boots damp, breath even, mist rising in slow tendrils that stroke the back of your neck like an over-friendly ghost. Trees crowd close on either side, tall, lean, and indifferent. Their bark is dark and flaked like something half asleep, and their leaves hang with the poise of librarians, alert, judgmental, and whispering just out of earshot. Then, beneath your feet, you notice them. Stones, flat ones, smooth ones, lined up in a pattern far too regular to be natural. Some are etched with grooves, some with symbols you don't recognize, circles within circles, strange little grids, a crude arrow that points not forward, but down. You step over it instinctively. These stones aren't part of the path, they're beneath it. Old, embedded, buried like bones. You crouch down and brush moss away from one particularly worn slab, and find letters so Roman, maybe, or Greek, or just pretending. You run your fingers along them and feel something hum through your palm. Not electricity, just memory. Historians still argue whether ancient forest trails were deliberately paved or simply hardened by centuries of foot traffic, but many agree. Stones like these often marked trade routes or borders between territories where no one dared live but everyone traveled through, which begs the question, if no one settled here, you broken bar, why is it watching you? You straighten up and glance around. That's when you spot them. More carvings, not in the trees this time but on the stones themselves. Etchings barely visible unless the light hits just right. Not initials. Names, full ones, some old and worn, some alarmingly fresh. One of them looks like it was scratched in just this morning, still flaking at the edges. You don't read it aloud. You don't need to, because you realize something peculiar. They're all first names, no surnames, no dates, just names, like introductions. A breeze stirs. You hear it, not rustling, not whistling but whispering, not words exactly, just the shape of them. You walk on. The forest narrows, and the mist climbs higher. It's at your waist now, like a river you're wading through. Every step leaves a swirl behind, slow to settle. You feel like you are being followed, but when you glance back, all you see are your footprints, and the mist closing over them like a sigh. To your left, a tree with bark so smooth it looks polished. Something's tied to it, a red ribbon, frayed at the ends, fluttering just slightly despite the still air. You don't touch it, you just nod, like it's someone you recognize but can't quite place. A little farther, and the trail curves again, passing a tree that's bent, not fallen, not broken, just leaning at a perfect, almost deliberate angle, its trunk arching over the path like a spine. As you duck beneath it, you feel something brush your back, and nothing sharp, nothing cold, just a presence, like the tree was checking who came through. You walk faster for a few steps, not out of fear, just out of manners. Then, a clearing. It opens like a breath, a sudden, soft, unexpected. Here, the mist thins, sunlight filters down in lazy beams. You take a step forward and your foot lands on something metal, a coin. You crouch. It's old, worn flat on one side. The design on the other is faded, but you catch the outline of a bird, maybe a raven, maybe a crow. Then you notice the others, coins, tucked into cracks in trees, pressed beneath stones, lying in circles, like some Enya or something arranged them carefully. Offerings, trail markers, tax payments for invisible toll roads. Quirky fact, in some Eastern European forest traditions, travelers would leave coins at waypoints to pay the woodland spirits for safe passage. Sometimes they were real spirits, sometimes just bandits with a flair for folklore. You pick up one coin, just to study it, and immediately regret it, not because anything happens, but because nothing happens. And nothing not happening in this forest feels worse than something happening at all. You put the coin back, just where it was. Then you hear the crows, not one or two, dozens, a full-throated choir erupting from somewhere in the canopy, their calls echoing like laughter and warning and applause all at once. You look up and see them flitting through the trees, black scraps against the light, circling above the clearing. They don't dive, they don't scatter, they watch, and beneath their chorus, you feel it. You're not alone anymore. The forest has begun paying attention, not just watching, listening, and somewhere ahead, deeper still, something is already waiting for your name. The crows quiet down as quickly as they began, their final calls cutting through the branches like punctuation marks on a sentence you didn't write. The silence that follows is thick, not empty, more like a crowd holding its breath. You leave the clearing slowly, careful not to step on any more coins, not because you're scared, exactly, just a broken bar, aware now that every step is being logged somehow. The path narrows again, as if it's trying to decide whether it trusts you. Trees lean in, closing a birch, mostly a wide-barked and peeling like they've been sunburned by too many memories. Their leaves shimmer without wind. You brush past one and it shivers beneath your hand, not from the touch, but from recognition. Then you see it, a willow, not just any willow, the willow. It rises on your left like a sentinel, or a mourner, its branches spill to the ground in long, green tendrils that sway toward you even though the air is still. They don't hang limp, they reach, not threateningly, just a broken bark curiously. You step closer. The bark is cracked but smooth in places, worn from hands that have leaned, pressed, maybe even clung. A small patch of earth beneath the tree is bare, as if feet have stood there often. You take your place without thinking, and it weeps. No, not actual tears, no dripping sap or melodramatic wailing, but something about the way the branches move feels emotional, as if the tree is echoing 1,000 past sorrows that were whispered here and stored in its roots for safekeeping. Quirky detail: in medieval folklore, willows were thought to remember grief. If you cried beneath one, it would take in your sorrow and keep it safe, so you wouldn't have to. Some villages even had a designated weeping tree, where the broken-hearted were encouraged to go instead of burdening the community well. You close your eyes and let the branches brush your face. They don't scratch, they soothe. A breeze picks up just enough to lift the mist and make the leaves sing. Not a melody exactly, but a rhythm, a pulse. You realize, slowly, it's matching your heartbeat. That's when you notice something glimmering just beside the base of the trunk. A ribbon, faded red, half buried in the soil. You kneel and brush it clean. It's tied to something. A scrap of paper, number, fabric, woven tightly. Old, but intact. You don't read what's written on it, because it's not for you. But the handwriting is delicate and slanted, like someone took hours to choose every letter. You tuck it gently back where it was, and then you hear it. A giggle, not close, but not far either. Childlike, not playful, though. It's got that edgy the kind kids use when they know something you don't and they're debating whether to let you in on the joke or make you squirm. You don't move, you wait, but nothing follows. The willow stills again, its branches lifting, rising just a little as if it's finished comforting you and is now standing up straighter. Its work here is done. You take one step back, and as you do, you notice the bark where you were leaning is darker now. Damp. No, it's not just damp, it's marked, the faint imprint of your hand, left behind like a smudge on a window. The tree has taken your touch and added it to its collection. That's fine. You didn't expect to walk this forest without leaving pieces of yourself behind. You rejoin the path, your lantern. Yes, you've had one this whole time. You just forgot until now. It burns softly at your side. It casts no real light, but it gives you just enough presence to remind the forest you're still here, still separate. You walk a little faster, not out of fear, out of respect. Then, in the distance, you hear the crows again, just one this time, then silence. The willow doesn't call you back, it doesn't need to. You'll remember it, and it will certainly remember you. The path curves again, deeper this time, tighter. Trees grow closer together now, like whispering siblings sharing some deeply questionable inside joke. The canopy thickens until only slits of silvery daylight drip through the leaves. You adjust your grip on the lantern, more out of habit than need. It hasn't flickered once. Then you hear it, a metallic clink, not random, rhythmic. Clink, clink, clink. It pulls you forward through the underbrush until you step into a small clearing and immediately stop. There's a tree at its center, wide, crooked, gnarled so tightly it looks like it's holding something in. All around it, in the bark, are coins. Some are wedged deep in natural crevices, some hammered into the wood with such force you wonder if the tree screamed. Others are balanced delicately on exposed roots like tiny silver offerings. Gold, copper, iron. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, each one with just enough age to make you question how long they've been there. You walk closer, careful not to step on the fallen coins dotting the grass like breadcrumbs left by someone with bad intentions. There's a man already there. No, not a man. A shape, sitting cross-legged at the base of the tree, face hidden beneath a hood made of stitched-together leaves. In his hand is a small hammer. He raises it slowly, deliberately. Clink, a new coin pressed into the bark. He doesn't look at you. You don't speak. It's not that kind of moment. Historians still argue whether coin trees were acts of devotion, superstition, or just the medieval equivalent of graffiti with a tip jar. In Scotland and northern England, travelers would press coins into specific trees as offerings for safe journeys, healed illnesses, or the odd romantic wish. Some believed taking a coin would curse you, others believed the curse came only if the tree noticed. The figure moves again, this time picking up a small pouch. He opens it, pulls out a coin that looks suspiciously new, and holds it out to you. You don't move. He tilts his head slightly, as if disappointed but not surprised. Then he turns the coin over once in his hand and places it, not in the tree, but on the ground beside you. Invitation, warning, receipt. He doesn't wait for your answer. In fact, when you blink, he's gone. No rustle, no exit, just gone. You stare at the coin. It's not one you've ever seen before. Too thin, too light, no numbers, no monarch's head, just a spiral etched into one side and a symbol that looks oddly like a broken bar door. You leave it where it is. No need to test the refund policy on forest magic. You back away from the tree slowly, making sure not to turn your back on it until you're safely beyond the clearing's edge. As you rejoin the path, the air feels lighter, not safer, but like the forest just shrugged and said, "All right, your call." A few yards ahead, something glints low to the ground. You kneel. Another coin, this one embedded in a root, but not by accident. It's placed like a compass rose, and as you trace the direction it points, you notice something else. All the trees ahead lean slightly to the right, as if they've been listening to something coming from that direction for a very long time. You follow the lean. As you walk, the sound of crows fades again, replaced by something softer. Wind chimes, number, leaves, but they rustle in odd harmony, like they've been rehearsing. A squirrel darts across your path with something shiny in its mouth. Probably not a coin, possibly a charm, definitely cursed. You let it pass. Further ahead, you spot another tree with coins, but these are melted, fused into the bark like they've been there since before metal was invented. The bark is darker, thicker, and you don't get closer. Some trees accept offerings, others collect them. You stay on the trail, not because you're afraid, because you're starting to understand. This forest runs on currency, yes, but not money, memory, intention, attention, and every coin left behind is a promise the forest still remembers. You're beginning to notice something odd about the path, and not the way it twists or sinks or disappears, but the way it seems to respond to you. When you pause, it waits. When you hesitate, it feels a little longer. When you walk with purpose, a broken bar the forest leans in. You round a bend and come to another narrowing, where trees stand like pillars in a half-collapsed cathedral. Their trunks stretch high but lean, and not just from age or wind, but in a way that feels deliberate, toward the path, toward you. At first it's subtle, a slight curve here, a bowed branch there, but soon, it becomes unmistakable. These trees are leaning in to listen. You stop walking. The silence that follows is thick, not the quiet of nothingness, but the breath-held hush of a room waiting for someone to speak. The leaves rustle above you but without breeze, just a low, dry shiver like whispered agreement. You say nothing, because what exactly would you say to trees listening this closely? In the old days, certain oak groves were considered sacred gathering spots, places where druids and local mystics held court beneath the branches, not because of the trees themselves, necessarily, but because of what people believed they could hear. Historians still argue whether these listening trees were an invention of early folklore or tied to a real auditory phenomenon, how certain trunks echo or amplify voices in strange ways. You take a slow step forward. The trees creak. It's not a threatening sound, more like a broken bar acknowledgement. You glance to your right. There's a knotted beech whose bark has been split and refused in such a way that it resembles a mouth open, wide, frozen mid-whisper. Below it, a scattering of acorns and feathers form a near circle, as if some Inya or something sat here to speak and listen, both at once. Then, from the left, a sudden rustle, not animal, not wind. You turn just in time to see a leaf fall, just one, large, golden brown, still whole. It drifts down and lands squarely in the center of your path. You stare at it. It stares back. That's not scientifically possible, but you believe it anyway. You step around it, respectfully. The path opens into a small glade, and for a moment, everything feels louder, not with noise, but with presence. The trees here don't just lean as they tilt, crowding close, their branches arching overhead in a lattice of shadow and rustling breath. You're in a corridor now, a hallway made of time and timber. Then, ahead of you, you spot a figure. No, wait, it's not a figure, it's a tree, shaped like a person. No, not shaped like he is shaped by weather, by time, by something else. Its limbs stretch like arms, its top split like antlers or wild hair. Some Inya or some Forcia carved or coaxed it into a form that looks just enough like a human that you second-guess yourself. You approach slowly. There are markings on the trunk of rings, not natural growth rings, but circles carved with tools or claws or teeth, maybe all three. In the center of the chest, a small hollow holds a bundle of dried herbs and something that looks like a lock of hair. You don't touch it. A bird lands above you, rustles, then flies away. A low wind stirs the branches, and from somewhere not far, not close, you hear a voice. It doesn't speak your language, or maybe it does, but not in words. It feels like memory pressing just behind your eyes. Something about a summer when the air was thick with bees, something about the smell of rosemary and smoke, something about someone you never knew, but remember missing anyway. Then the voice is gone. The forest exhales, and the trace adjusts slightly straighten. You keep walking. Every step feels gentler now, like you've been vouched for. You glance back once. The person-shaped tree still stands there, quiet, unmoved, but somehow satisfied. The forest isn't just watching anymore, it's participating, and it remembers everything you didn't say. The trail flattens out briefly, though nothing here ever stays straight for long. Roots push up through the dirt like knuckles. Stones rise where no stones were a moment before. You've stopped trying to guess which way the forest will let you go. It's not a maze, it's a conversation, and sometimes, it's your turn to listen. Up ahead, the path opens again, but not into light, into moss. A mound, low and wide, stretches across your way like a sleeping animal. It's covered entirely in green, soft as velvet, thick as memory. You step up to it and feel the air change, cooler, deeper, like the moment just before a storm or just after a secret has been shared. You climb slowly. The moss doesn't resist, but it doesn't give either. It's not springy, it's intentional, like it's holding its shape for your weight. Beneath it, you can't feel roots or stone or soil, just warmth, a low, steady hum not in your ears, but in your bones. You sit, because of course you do. That's what this place is for. You've found what some call a hollow hill. In folklore, especially throughout Celtic and Norse traditions, these mounds were said to be entrances to the other world and the homes of the fair folk, the hidden ones, the not quite human. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were born from burial barrows, natural formations, or the kind of strange feelings you're feeling right now, that this hill is a broken bar and maybe listening back. You stretch your legs, place your lantern beside you, and take a long breath. It smells different here, like crushed thyme and wet clay. And something else is something that smells almost like sleep, not the lavender spritzed kind, the old kind, the kind you fall into when you've walked too long, dreamed too deep, or remembered something your family never told you but your body always knew. You lie back slowly. The moss doesn't just cradle you, it adjusts. It remembers your shape, like you've been here before. Above you, the trees part slightly, and you get a full view of the sky. No stars, not yet, just a low ceiling of soft gray clouds that drift like thought bubbles over the treetops. One of them looks suspiciously like a deer, another like a closed eye. You close your own, just for a moment. You don't fall asleep, not really, but you slip into something quieter. Something between, and in that space, you hear them. Footsteps, dozens, maybe more, soft, bare, moving across the moss. You open your eyes slowly, gently, and there's no one there, but the footprints are pressed into the moss around you in soft spirals and wandering arcs, some large, some impossibly small, none of them yours, and all of them recent. A chill works its way up your spine, not out of fear, but recognition. You're not the first to rest here, and you won't be the last. You sit up slowly, brushing moss from your sleeves. The hill doesn't protest. If anything, it seems to give you a little push, like a friend nudging you out the door after tea. You pick up your lantern, which still glows steadily, and glance behind you. The hill is still there, unmoving, unmoved, but the footprints, gone. The moss has closed over them, and now it's as if Aya and you were never there. You step off the mound, back onto the path. It's exactly where you left it, exactly how it's always been. Except now you carry a warmth you didn't have before. Not in your skin, in your story. The path winds gently now, like it knows you've just woken from something sacred and doesn't want to startle you. The air is clearer here, less mist, more gold-tinged light filtering through the branches and delicate slats. Your lantern glows a little brighter, not out of need, but in harmony, like it's matching the rhythm of the forest instead of resisting it. Then, just a eddy movement, not fast, not frantic, just flickers of light, not fireflies, though that's what you think at first. These move differently. Fireflies dart, Thessie broken bar hover, drift, wait. Lanterns, suspended in the air. Dozens of them, but there are no branches above. You look up and see only sky through a narrow clearing in the canopy, pale and high and uncaring, yet the lanterns float there, like someone hung them from clouds. You take a step forward, they shift, just a little. Their glow changes from amber to soft green to a pale, almost silver hue, not randomly, but with intention, as if they're reacting to you, studying your movements, deciding something. You reach your hand toward one, it bobs back slowly, respectfully, not fearful, just polite. They are not toys, they are not decorations, they are watching you, just as much as you're watching them. Somewhere deep in the archives of European folklore is a curious phrase, where light hangs without a hook, speak only in kindness. Historians still argue whether this referred to ball lightning, fairy lights, or just weird weather. But in old forest tales, floating lights were often signs of thresholds, places where one world leaks into another. Tricksy, yes, but also tender. If you approached them with the right heart. You lower your hand, the lantern closest to you glows a warm gold, another flickers pale blue, another winks out entirely only to reappear behind you. You don't flinch, you nod, and they scatter, not far, not fast, just enough to open the path ahead. It winds through the lanterns like a hallway of hovering stars. You step between them, your own lantern humming quietly in your hand like it's trying to harmonize. Then you see it, a stone plinth in the center of the clearing, unadorned, low, with a flat surface the width of a dinner plate, resting atop it. A glass orb, clear, smooth, glowing faintly with no visible source. You kneel beside it. It doesn't change, doesn't flash or spin or crackle with mystical energy. It just is. You lean in, and inside the orb, you see yourself, not just your reflection, a version of you from behind, walking this path, carrying this lantern, with the forest stretched endlessly ahead. You blink, the image fades, replaced by trees, then by nothing. Just soft glow again. You stand, no wiser, but also a broken bar no more lost. The lanterns begin to drift again, slowly lifting, higher this time, until one by one they vanish into the leaves above like fire ascending to where fire doesn't belong. You step away from the plinth, and the moment you do, the forest changes again, not dramatically, just subtly. The trees now lean away from the path instead of toward it. The moss grows thinner. The air tastes of rain, not falling, but about to, and the bird song returns. Real birds this time, you think, a warbler here, a blackbird there, even the chuckle of a jay, somewhere far off and unimpressed. You keep walking, your lantern flickers on, see it then steadies. The forest feels less enchanted now, but not because the magic is gone, because you've changed. You don't need the show anymore. You've passed the test, or the threshold, or the polite inspection of a group of floating lights who never introduced themselves but clearly had opinions. The forest has moved on, so have you. The trail ahead feels deceptively normal now. Dirt underfoot, leaves rustling in a breeze that's back to acting like wind should. You find yourself relaxing, just a little, enough to breathe without checking over your shoulder, enough to think maybe, just maybe, you're through the strangest part of the woods. That's when the scent hits you. Warm bread, spiced fruit, roasted meat, and something sweet like honey and orange blossom tangled in steam. You round a bend and stop short. There's a table, an actual dining table, set in a clearing beneath a perfect ring of oaks. 8 chairs, wooden, sturdy, worn with age, each one pushed neatly beneath its place. The table itself is long, covered in a white cloth too clean for the forest. Platters line its surface, silver, wood, and earthenware, each piled high with food. None of it is rotting, none of it is steaming, all of it ice, a broken bar ready, a feast waiting for guests. or leftovers waiting for a host that never returned. You step into the clearing, and the forest grows very quiet, not in warning, in anticipation, like it wants to see what you'll do. You don't sit, because you know better. In more than a few cultures, stumbling upon an untouched feast in the forest means one thing: you've crossed into another realm. Fairy circles, otherworldly banquets, a gift or a trip, often both. Historians still argue whether these stories were cautionary metaphors or just the result of extremely specific hallucinations from moldy bread. Either way, you leave the food untouched, but you observe. One plate holds roasted bird, tiny, golden-skinned, its legs tied neatly with twine. Another holds what looks like berry tart, crust so flaky yet practically exhales sugar. There's even a bowl of what could be porridge, except it's studded with something darker: raisins, probably, maybe insects, hard to say in this light. A wooden cup sits at each place. You lift one gently and peer inside. Water, clear, still, but somehow broken, bar too clear, like it hasn't moved in centuries. You put it back. That's when you notice something strange. Each chair has something resting on the seat. Not cushions, not coats, objects. One holds a doll, hand-stitched, one eye missing. Another has a pair of gloves, a child-sized, worn thin at the fingertips. A third has a pine cone, perfect, untouched, wrapped with twine. You move slowly, studying each seat like it's a museum display. Chair 4, a comb. Chair 5, a candle stub, unlit. Chair 6, a silver ring, cracked right down the middle. Chair 7, a single boot, unlaced, toe scuffed. Chair 8, at the head of the table, holds a mirror, small, oval, set in a tarnished bronze frame. You glance into it, and it's not you. It's not even your face. It's a tree, just the trunk, wide and knotted, with a notch where a heart was once carved. Then the image fades. Your reflection returns. You step back from the mirror. The forest watches, but says nothing. You hear no birds, no insects, no breeze, just the sound of your own breath, and the faint creak of wood, one of the chairs shifting slightly. You don't flinch. You nod, and the clearing lets you go. You step off the mossy ring and rejoin the path, which picks up like it never broke. Behind you, the feast remains, untouched, but not unwatched. You walk faster, and this time, the forest walks with you, not behind, not ahead, beside, as if it's finally decided. You're doing fine. The light changes, becomes more golden, drowsy, like afternoon slipping into dream, and with that shift comes another feeling. You're not headed deeper anymore. You're beginning to find your way home. You don't notice the loop until you've already walked it. At first, everything seems new again: moss-dappled stones, bird chatter threading through high branches, the scent of pine mixed with something a little citrusy. The path narrows, then widens, curves left, curves right, a broken bar, and then curves left again. That's when it hits you. You've seen this before. That twisted root sticking out like a bent toe, the one you avoided earlier. Here it is again. Same curve in the trail, same shadow leaning just a little too far across the path. You stop, turn around. The trail behind you looks different than it did a moment ago. Longer, sharper, as if it's been rearranged in your absence. You walk back the way you came, just to test it. 3 steps in, the air thickens, like syrup, like fog that isn't wet. Your lantern dims, not out of weakness, but almost as if it's being muffled. You turn again. The way forward clears. You're not being trapped. You're being rerouted. There's a difference. And now, as you walk it slowly, purposefully, you begin to notice something else. Footsteps. Yours, but not exactly. They echo behind you, just a breath too late, as if someone is copying you. Badly. You stop. The echo stops. You start again. So does it. But when you glance behind you, there's nothing there. No one. Just a broken bar. Historians still argue whether tales of double paths in folklore represent spiritual crossroads, metaphors for indecision, or simply forest acoustics playing tricks on lonely travelers. But in this moment, it feels more like a mirror that's trying to see what you'll do next. You choose not to panic. Probably a good call. You move off the main path just slightly, stepping onto a patch of dry leaves. You listen, step, listen. The echo doesn't follow. It only echoes when you stay on the trail. You step back onto the dirt path. Crunch. The mimic returns. You stop walking. This time, instead of looking back, You crouch and wait. A full minute passes. Nothing. Then a crunch. One more step. Slow, cautious. From behind you, you straighten up. Don't run. Running never works in these stories. You whisper not loud, just enough for the wind to carry. If you want to follow, do it properly. There's silence, then a breeze, warm, familiar, like someone exhaling near your ear, and the mimicry stops. You glance down at your feet and for the first time, you notice your footprints. All of them, not just the ones you made today, older ones, faded, softened by time, but clearly yours. Same bootprint, same gait, as if you've walked this path many times before. You follow them now, not the current trail, not the echo, just the impressions you left a broken bar long ago, recently. It doesn't matter, because the footprints lead you somewhere new, a glade, small and quiet, ringed by birch trees with bark that peels and curling scrolls. In the center, a single stone, flat, square, inscribed with 2 words. Try again. That's it. No date, no name, just encouragement. You sit on the stone, and suddenly, everything feels still. The trees don't lean, the wind doesn't watch, the echo doesn't follow. It's just you, which, ironically, is the only moment the forest has truly let you rest. You close your eyes for a moment, and in the quiet, you feel it. The path is changing again, not against you, for you. This time, the loop isn't a trick, it's an invitation, a second chance, a way forward that asks gently, are you ready now? You stand, turn once more, and the path ahead no longer curves. It welcomes. The path ahead feels more open now, not because the trees have moved it a haven, but because you have. Something in your step has changed. Your lantern, still glowing low and steady, doesn't feel like a light anymore. It feels like a signal, a quiet declaration. I belong here, or at least, I'm trying to. You step carefully over a root and into a clearing that's unlike the others. This one is quiet in a way that isn't empty, it's full of expectation. And above you, in the tress, a broken bar, shoes. Dozens of them, no, not dozens, hundreds, hanging from branches, laces tied together, looped and tossed so perfectly they don't dangle, they just hang. Each pair swaying slightly in a breeze that doesn't reach the ground. At first, it looks almost silly, a prank, maybe, a forgotten ritual from some teenage dare. But then you notice the shoes themselves. None are new, most are soft with age, cracked at the soles, toes turned up like cold smiles. Some are stitched with patches, others have names burned into the leather. A few are children's shoes, a tiny, muddy, one missing its twin. And at least one pair is carved from wood, perfectly polished, dangling upside down like they might walk again if someone flipped them over. You step into the middle of the grove and look up. The branches stretch far above, high and tangled, yet none of the shoes seem out of place. Each pair has space, none compete for room. You sit on a mossy stump and listen. No birds, no wind, but something moves above you, just a single shoe swaying harder than the rest, creaking gently on its lace. It turns slowly, and for a brief moment, it points at you. A low, hollow sound fills the grove, not threatening, more like a sigh through a flute. It seems to rise from the shoes themselves, like wind moving through worn memories. You glance down at your own feet, suddenly aware of them in a way you haven't been all day. Then you notice what lies at the base of the stump, a pair of shoes, not hanging, placed side by side, not yours, but your size, same make, same scuff on the toe. You don't touch them, you don't need to, because this isn't about putting on a new pair of shoes, it's about remembering the ones you walked here in. This place, the Grove of Sleeping Shoes, isn't a memorial, it's a map, a record of every step someone took before they changed. In some corners of Europe, there are stories around about travelers who left offerings not of food or coin, but footwear. The idea was simple: when your journey outgrew the boots you wore, you left them behind, not out of vanity, out of reverence. Historians still debate whether these practices ever existed, or if they're just a beautiful metaphor that got repeated enough to feel true. But here, it feels true. You stand slowly, the wind lifts a bit, the shoes above you rustle like a soft round of applause. No clapping, just approval. You bow only slightly, but sincerely, and step back onto the path. The shoes don't stop swaying. They don't need to, because some part of you is now tied among them. not trapped, just remembered. You walk on, and this time, you notice your footsteps feel lighter, like they're no longer just carrying you forward a broken bar. They're leading something back. The path dips downward now, sloping like a gentle thought. The trees thin slightly, the sky peeking through in soft swirls of pale gray. Your lantern glows warm in your hand, no longer necessary for sight, but still useful for company. You pass a fern, then another, and another. Suddenly, they're everywhere, crowding the forest floor in lush green fronds that reach knee-high, shoulder-high, even chest-high in places. They sway, just barely, like they're breathing. You step carefully. The moment your foot brushes one of them, you hear it. A voice, not a word, exactly just a sound. Soft, lilting, like a distant whisper filtered through old wood and fog. You freeze, tilt your head. Nothing. You step again. More whispers. They're coming from beneath the ferns, not under the ground, just below the leaves, as though the air there carries a different language. You crouch, brush the fronds aside, and lean in. The forest hums, not loudly, but clearly, and in that hum, you hear a broken bar, phrases, half-sentences, snippets, not modern, not familiar, old language, something that sounds like it belongs to both lullabies and warnings. One line catches in your ear: the ones who walk without forgetting a broken bar. The rest slips past, like a fish through reeds. You kneel fully now, elbows in the moss, nose nearly touching the forest floor. It smells like rain-soaked paper, like books that were never written but remembered anyway. And now you hear the voices better, not just whispers. Conversations, dozens of them, overlapping and rolling beneath the ferns. Some are laughing, others are chanting. One is humming a tune you've never heard but immediately understand. It tugs at something just behind your ribs. You stand slowly. You're in a place where the forest dreams out loud, and every fern is an antenna. Historians still argue whether ancient woodland groves were chosen for their acoustics, natural resonance, or simply because they felt like places where something listened back. There are records of travelers reporting voices in the woods, and not madness, but murmurs of events long past or warnings yet to come. Most dismissed them. You don't. You keep walking. The ferns brush your arms like friends too shy to speak directly. You nod to them, and the whispers dim a little, softening into one another until they become a single, endless sigh. You enter a stretch of the path where the trees grow strange tall pines with spiraling bark and leaves that shine silver green in the light. You touch one, and it feels warm, not sun-warmed, alive warmed. You come across a fallen log covered in moss and fungus. Carved into its side are words: "We are not forgotten, we are just further in." You don't know who carved it, but the lettering is careful, symmetrical. Someone took time, someone believed it was worth remembering. The path splits briefly at two trails, veering apart before joining again, like a river that tried to divide itself and changed its mind. You take the left one. It's narrower, quieter. The ferns here glow just a little, not visually but emotionally, the way certain places do, like a grandmother's kitchen, or the spot where you first realized the world was bigger than you'd planned for. Then just at a dip in the ground, a hollow, and in the center, resting gently on a nest of leaves, a wooden flute, carved from a single piece of dark wood, its surface worn smooth by time and fingers and possibly teeth. A sprig of thyme is tied around the mouthpiece with red thread. You don't touch it, but you sit beside it. The air is still, the forest is quiet, even the whispers hold their breath, and from somewhere, maybe the leaves, maybe the sky, maybe your own ribs, you hear the flute play, just one note, clear, sad, full of home. You don't know the tune, but it knows you. You rise gently. The ferns part before you as you walk, no longer brushing, just clearing the way. And as you move forward, the voices beneath the leaves return, and not louder, just closer, not haunting, just hoping. The whispers fade as you leave the fern bed behind, thinning like mist in morning sun. The air grows lighter again, and not in temperature, but in mood, like something has released you. Or maybe you've finally started releasing yourself. The trees ahead pull back, revealing a stretch of open woodland where soft grass carpets the ground and the underbrush takes a polite step aside. The trail seems to vanish here, no obvious path, no clever stones, just space, and a river, wide, still, glinting like liquid slate beneath the sky. It appears without warning, one moment, just forest, The next, this dark mirror stretched across your way. You step toward the bank. No bridge, no boat, just a river, slow and sure, cutting through the woods like a secret. You kneel at the edge. The water is clear, but deep. You see fish below, small ones, darting like flickers of memory. A single leaf drifts by, turning lazy spirals, and then a ripples. Not from you, from the center of the river, circles expanding outward. You stand, and that's when the stones rise. Not all at once. One, then another, then a third, each one emerging from the water with a soft splash and a sigh, like they've just woken up from a long nap. They form a line, a path, right across the river. You don't question it. Okay, you do, briefly, but not out loud. You step onto the first stone. It's warm, not slippery, not heavy, just right. The next stone rises a little more as you approach, as if anticipating your foot. You keep going. One by one, they lift, each stone spaced perfectly for your stride, not too far, not too close, and each one feels carved in not natural river rock, but shaped by hand, or intention. Halfway across, you stop, look down. In the reflection, you don't see yourself. You see someone older, not ancient, just weathered. Their face carries the miles you've walked. Their shoulders are straighter, eyes deeper. They look like someone who's learned how to carry silence with grace. You blink. It's you again, but different now. The stone beneath your foot hums faintly, like a distant bell. You move on. Behind you, the stones begin to sink slowly, gently vanishing beneath the surface, as if to say, no going back. When you step onto the far bank, the air changes again, richer, thicker, but not oppressive. Like entering a room where someone's just finished telling a very old, very honest story. There's a tree here, tall, black-barked, with roots that twist and curl above the ground like sleeping serpents. On its trunk, a small wooden sign, nailed askew. It reads, "Almost home." You pause, smile, and keep walking. The trail returns a subtle, almost shy. It curves into the woods again, but not to confuse you this time. To welcome, because something ahead is waiting, not with judgment, with recognition. You pass a small cairn of stones stacked neatly, a red thread tied around the top one, a charm, maybe, a memory, a message. You don't know what it means, but it means something. Everything here does, because this forest no longer feels strange. It feels like a version of truth that's been whispering to you for years. Just beneath the noise, the lantern in your hand glows steady, and somewhere in the distance a bell rings, not loud, just enough to say, yes, you're nearly there. The bell's echo fades into the branches above you, dissolving into the hush like a stone into a still lake. You pause, listening, and not for another sound, but for what remains in its absence. The forest is no longer testing you, it's walking you home. The trail meanders with calm confidence now, wide enough to breathe, narrow enough to feel held. Your lantern hums faintly, its glow syncing with your heartbeat. It feels like it's part of you now, less tool, more tether. Then the wind changes, only slightly, but with it comes a whisper. This time, not beneath ferns, not in carved stones, not tucked into tree bark. This time, the wind says your name, quietly, clearly, not the name you use every day, not the one on your ID or inbox, the other one, the name only your childhood might remember, the name you whispered to yourself before sleep when no one was listening, the name that felt like a secret spell. You stop walking, the tree is still, the name comes again, soft, insistent, like a friend tapping on the door of your memory. You turn slowly in place, nothing moves, no shape, no shadow, just hair, just branches, just presence. You whisper back, I remember, and the wind quiets, not because it's finished but because it's satisfied. In ancient folklore, winds were often believed to carry names, both those forgotten and those yet to be spoken. Some cultures tied ribbons to trees and whispered names into the breeze, hoping the forest would carry them where they were needed most. Historians still debate whether this was a mourning practice, a wish-making ritual, or simply a poetic way to handle grief that had nowhere else to go. You keep walking. The air is cooler now, but not cold. It wraps around you gently, like a shawl woven from dusk and kindness. Then you see it, a stone wall, low, crumbled, covered in moss and time. And on the other side, an open field. Tall grasses ripple in the wind, golden and soft. The sky above has begun its shift into evening, a colors deepening, clouds stretching like slow thoughts across the horizon. You step over the wall, and the trees behind you don't follow. They stop, just before the boundary. You glance back once, and for the first time, the forest looks exactly like what it is, a place that lets you leave. You face forward again, and there, at the edge of the field, is another tree, alone, not grand, just present. On its trunk is a carving, your name, the one the wind spoke. You reach out and run your fingers over it. It's old, not fresh, already grown over in places, as if it's been here longer than you. You sit beneath the tree, the grass rustles around you like applause softened by distance. The lantern dims slightly, then steadies, and in the silence that follows, something settles inside you, a knowing that you've not only walked a broken bar you've walked through yourself. The wind lifts one last time, ruffling your hair, nudging the lantern, and whispering once more, "Welcome back." You remain beneath the lone tree for longer than you intended, not out of reluctancy but because it feels like the final comma before a sentence ends. The breeze sighs gently through the tall grass, each blade tilting and nodding like they, too, remember your name. Your lantern rests beside you now, its light low and steady, no longer trying to prove anything. It simply glows, quietly, honestly. You rise, slowly, stretching limbs that feel older in a good way, used, trusted, softened by purpose. The path continues, not through forest, not through shadow, but across the field. A worn trail cuts through the golden grass, winding like a ribbon left by a dancer who forgot to come back. You follow it. It doesn't lead you forward, it leads you inward. The sun dips lower, the horizon blushes with lavender and gold. You hear birds again, high overhead, but they aren't watching anymore, they're just living. And you're returning. Then, at the curve of the field you see it, a memory. No, not quite, a structure. Low walls, a collapsed roof, what used to be a small cottage, maybe, or a way station. Moss carpets the stone, vines lace the doorway like embroidery. Inside, there's a hearth, long cold, but swept. There's no door, no shutters, no furniture, but it feels kept, like someone visits, or waits. You step inside. On the back wall, above the hearth, hangs a single object, a mirror, framed in rough wood, uneven, the kind someone carves slowly, over many winters, without ever calling it art. You look into it. It doesn't show your face, not at first. It shows the forest, a winding path, floating lanterns, a feast untouched, a willow tree that still weeps, shoes swinging from branches, stones rising from water, and you walking through it all like a ghost who hasn't decided whether to haunt or to heal. You blink, and now it shows your eyes, softer, not tired, tempered. Then the mirror darkens, and you feel a quiet click deep inside you. Something has locked into place. Something you didn't know was loose. You leave the structure without touching anything. Your footsteps in the grass don't disturb the birds. Even the insects seem to hum in approval. And the pines return, tall, silent, ancient. But this time, they don't guard, they welcome. Their trunks form a gentle archway wide enough for one person, and one story. You walk through, and on the other side, you find it. The road, worn, dusty, real. There are no cars, no houses in view, just the old kind of road. It two ruts, some gravel, and the sound of breeze moving through telephone wires. You stand at its edge, one foot still in the pine needles. Your lantern glows faintly, then fades, not out of exhaustion, out of completion. It did what it came to do. You did, too. You cross the road. On the other side, there's a mailbox, rusty, unmarked, but standing. You smile, because somehow, impossibly, this was always the way home. You just had to walk through the woods to remember it. You don't walk far past the mailbox, just a few steps more, up a gentle hill dotted with soft yellow flowers you can't name, but that feel vaguely familiar, like you saw them once in a dream, pressed between the pages of a book no one ever read aloud. At the top of the hill, you stop, because there it is, home. It's not a house, not a village, not even a place that would show up on any map. It's a clearing, wide, open, and quietly alive. In the center stands a circle of flat stone just large enough to sit on, just small enough to look unimportant. Around the circle, the grass is worn, like people have been here, like you have been here, and in the arrow broken bar, a stillness, not emptiness, not loneliness, just a peace that has weight to it, like a blanket warmed by the sun. You step into the circle and sit on one of the stones. It fits you, not just your body, your mood. You set the lantern down beside you, and this time, it doesn't glow, it rests. You rest. The sky above stretches white, painted in blues and pinks and deepening violets, as though twilight is brushing the world with long, patient strokes. The first stars begin to appear, hesitant but curious. You lean back onto your elbows, eyes on the sky, and something unfolds inside you, a soft, wordless unraveling of every knot you didn't know you'd tied, every question that didn't need answering, every burden you mistook for a part of yourself. They loosen, float, fade, and in their place, quiet, not silence, not absence, just a broken bar quiet. You lie back fully now, head resting on the earth, the stone cool beneath you. You feel the hum again, and not from the moss, or the trees, or the stone as a but from yourself, like something ancient and still is singing quietly inside you. And then, from somewhere very close, but nowhere you can see, a whisper. You made it. You don't need to know who said it, or if anyone did, because it's true. You did make it. Through the echoes, through the feast, through the shoes, through the name the wind carried, through the path that folded in on itself until it became a mirror. And now you're here, not to finish the journey, but to close it gently, like a book that's meant to be reread when you're older. You watch as a star blinks into place overhead, brighter than the rest. It flickers once, then again, then stays, a rhythm, a breath. You close your eyes. The grass rustles softly beside you. The lantern exhales its last faint glow, and the forest waits. Because here, where the path ends and yourself begins again, there is nothing left to do but rest, just rest. And now, everything softens. The light, the air, even your thoughts, they slow, stretch, and settle like dust in a quiet room. Your body sinks gently into the memory of where you've been, the moss, the ferns, the river, the shoes that swayed above your head like lullabies sewn from leather. Each place is still with you, but none of them ask for anything. The path is no longer under your feet, it's within you, carried in the way your breath has learned to slow, in the way your shoulders have finally dropped, in the way your heartbeat no longer needs to race ahead of you. You are here, just here, not back there, not ahead, just now. The forest, if you listen, is not gone, it's just quieter, because you no longer need it to speak. And the wind, if you feel it, still remembers your name, but it doesn't call you anymore, because you're home. So let your eyes close, let the breath you're holding become one long exhale, let the light fade, the leaves settle, and the path go quiet behind you, because tonight, nothing is chasing you, nothing is waiting for you, and nothing is missing from you. You made it. You returned. You are whole. Now rest, just rest.